Have you ever driven through a small town and wondered what would happen if everyone suddenly left? No goodbyes, no explanations, just silence, with empty buildings standing like frozen memories. Now picture that, not in some quiet countryside, but in the middle of the most extreme desert in North America. A place so hot that in 1913, the temperature here reached 134 degrees Fahrenheit, the hottest ever recorded on Earth. Yet against all odds, people built entire towns here. Towns with banks, hotels, and even newspapers. Thousands of people once called this burning desert home. But here's the strange part. Those towns didn't last. Some collapsed in months. Others fought for years before fading back into dust. Today, their remains lie scattered across the desert floor, haunting reminders of lives that once burned brightly and quickly. Why did people risk everything here? Why would they gamble their futures in a land so unforgiving? And most of all, why did their dreams vanish so quickly? That's the mystery we're unraveling tonight, as we step into Death Valley's forgotten cities and trace the vanishing past buried in its sand. Before we dive deeper, I want to share something personal. I'm working hard to reach 1,000 subscribers as a small creator. If you appreciate stories like this one, please consider subscribing. Your support means everything to this channel. If most ghost towns are frozen in decay, then Shoshone is the exception that rewrote its own story. In the early 1900s, Shoshone looked like any other desert boomtown, a cluster of wooden shacks, miners chasing copper dreams, and the endless promise of riches buried beneath the scorching soil. But the mines here never lived up to the hype. Like so many others, the town began to fade, swallowed by the same silence that claimed its neighbors. And yet, Shoshone refused to die. The key to that survival lies in one woman, Susan Sorrells. Instead of letting the town collapse into ruin, she chose to rebuild it, not as a mining hub, but as an oasis of preservation. Under her guidance, Shoshone transformed into a place where history and ecology intertwine. Old miners' cabins became inns. The barren land became a refuge for rare desert life, including the endangered Amargosa vole and the tiny, resilient pupfish that has survived in isolated desert springs since the Ice Age. It's a strange twist, isn't it? A town once built on extraction, taking everything from the land, now thrives on protecting it. And maybe that's why Shoshone feels different from the other ghost towns. It's not just a graveyard of failed dreams. It's living proof that the desert can give back if you learn to respect it. But not every mining town found such redemption. Some doubled down on ambition, chasing gold with engineering genius and paying a deadly price for it. In the desert, survival itself is a battle. Yet some pioneers went further. They tried to outsmart the desert with pure ingenuity. And in places like Skidoo and the Keene Wonder Mine, that ambition left behind both marvels and warnings. Take Skidoo. Born in 1906 during the Bullfrog Gold Rush, this wasn't just another dusty mining camp. Here, engineers pulled off something extraordinary. They built a water pipeline stretching miles across the desert, bringing precious water down from Telescope Peak. That water powered a massive 15-stamp mill, pounding ore day and night, extracting gold from rock in a place that seemed impossible to tame. For a moment, Skidoo looked unstoppable. The mill thundered, gold flowed, and hope filled the air. But as quickly as it rose, it fell. By the 1920s, the gold ran thin, the mill went silent, and Skidoo slipped into ghostly silence. And then, there's the Keene Wonder Mine. At its peak in the early 1900s, it was called a wonder for good reason. Imagine standing in the Funeral Mountains, watching buckets of ore swing through the sky on a 1,500-foot-long aerial tramway. It was innovation at its boldest, a floating conveyor belt of gold. But here's the catch. Mining wasn't just hard, it was deadly. Workers faced collapsing shafts, toxic chemicals like cyanide and mercury, and blistering heat. Even decades later, the mine's leftovers are dangerous. The National Park Service warns visitors, the ground here still hides unstable tunnels, poisoned soil, and air that can kill. These places remind us of something haunting. Yes, humans can engineer brilliance, even in the harshest desert. But the cost of ambition in Death Valley was often measured in lives, and the land has a way of taking back what it's owed. And while some mines collapsed from danger, others collapsed for reasons no one saw coming. Not every ghost town died because of bad luck or dangerous mines. Some collapsed for reasons far more human. Take Schwab, for example. Named after steel magnate Charles Schwab, this mining camp seemed destined for success. In the early 1900s, miners rushed in, businesses opened, and the town buzzed with hope. But then came a twist no one expected. It wasn't the ore that ran out, it was the people. Why? Because the women of Schwab made a bold choice. They banned alcohol. Overnight, the saloons, the heartbeat of any frontier town, shut their doors. And without those rowdy gathering places, the men packed up and left. Within a year, the dry town went silent. Schwab's collapse wasn't written in stone or gold, but in social conflict. Then there's Riley, a camp that somehow defied time. Established in the 1880s during a silver rush, Riley never exploded into a boomtown, but it never fully vanished either. Instead, its adobe ruins, mining structures, and artifacts remain so well preserved that today it's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Walking there feels like stepping straight back into the 19th century, each crumbling wall telling a quieter story of resilience. These towns remind us that the desert wasn't just about profit or engineering feats. It was about people, their choices, their conflicts, their stubbornness. Sometimes it wasn't nature or money that decided a town's fate, but human nature itself. And still, beyond these social dramas, there were towns where disaster struck so suddenly and so violently that people never had a chance to choose at all. Some towns in Death Valley rose like a storm and vanished just as fast. Others clung on, half alive, half forgotten. And it's these lesser-known places that carry some of the most dramatic twists of all. Take Ibex Springs. Out here, the desert feels endless, the silence almost crushing. But in 1881, men dug into this barren earth chasing copper, silver, and later talc. Imagine the isolation. Days of blistering heat, nights of freezing cold, the wind howling through makeshift shacks. The mines produced enough to keep life going, but never enough to make Ibex a true boomtown. Today, the site is scattered with ruins, half swallowed by sand, like bones of a dream that never quite stood on its own. Then there's the Inyo mine, discovered in 1905. At first, it seemed like just another flash in the pan, but unlike many rivals, it had staying power. Production revived in 1928, giving the camp a second life. The remains still cling to the rocky slopes, cabins, tunnels, and rusting machinery, telling stories of grit and sheer persistence. And then, there's Panamint City. This one is different. In 1872, silver was struck, and within 2 years, Panamint swelled to nearly 2,000 people. It had its own newspaper, smelters, and even whispers of outlaw gangs hiding in the mountains. It looked unstoppable. But the desert doesn't play fair. In 1876, a massive flash flood roared down the canyon. It ripped through the town, smashing buildings, sweeping lives away. In one night, Panamint's glory was drowned. Today, it takes a brutal hike to reach the ruins. Few make it there, but those who do say the silence feels heavy, like the canyon still remembers. Fast rises, sudden falls. Some towns faded quietly, others were ripped apart in an instant. And behind all these stories, there was one driving force tying them together: the relentless boom and bust cycle of mining in Death Valley. Boom, bust. That's the heartbeat of Death Valley's mining past. Each strike of gold or silver lit the desert with fire, and each collapse left only ashes. In the late 1800s, borax was king. Massive mule teams, 20 animals strong, dragged white crystals across the desert floor. For a time, borax mining seemed untouchable, but the market shifted, prices fell, and those camps crumbled just like the gold towns before them. Then came 1905. The bullfrog strike sent shockwaves across the West. Thousands flooded in, building towns almost overnight. Streets were staked out, saloons hammered together, newspapers printed with wild promises, and for a brief, intoxicating moment, it all looked unstoppable. But money is fickle. By 1907, a financial panic swept across America. Banks failed, investors fled, and the fragile skeleton of desert towns snapped in two. One by one, they emptied, as if the desert had simply inhaled and blown them away. Here's the pattern. Every rush burned bright, but none lasted. Not because the miners lacked courage or the desert lacked resources, but because greed always raced ahead of reality. Ore veins ran thin, markets shifted, and transportation costs killed profits. And so the cycle spun on: ambition, explosion, collapse, silence, over and over again. The ruins that remain aren't just relics of failed dreams. They're echoes, warnings, proof that the desert takes back everything, no matter how fiercely people try to hold on. But amid all the collapse, there's something else. A lingering feeling that these towns still whisper to us. A reminder that human ambition may fade, but the desert remembers. Walk through Death Valley today and you'll see it. Crumbling stone walls, rusted machinery, wooden beams leaning against the wind. To some, they look like ruins. To others, they feel like time capsules. But to those who listen closely, they're voices. Voices of miners who staked everything for a chance at fortune. Voices of families who built schools and churches, believing they had carved out permanence in a land that offers none. And voices of the desert itself. Patient, unyielding, always ready to reclaim what is hers. Some towns, like Shoshone, found new life in reinvention. Others, like Panamint City, were wiped away in an instant. But all of them share the same fate. They remind us how fragile human ambition is when set against the raw, merciless power of nature. So why does it matter? Because these ghost towns are more than broken buildings. They're mirrors. They reflect our hunger for progress, our tendency to gamble with the unknown, and our refusal to accept limits. In the end, Death Valley's forgotten cities are not just about what was lost, but about what remains. The silence, the sand, and the haunting truth that no dream, no matter how bright, can outlast the desert. If Death Valley can hide entire cities beneath its sands, imagine what other secrets are still waiting. Don't miss the next story. Subscribe and keep exploring with us.